Welcome everyone to our Instructor Training Center Introduction to Networks course. My name is Kelly Caudill. This is our first class meeting. It's Wednesday, so on Wednesday we wear green. The men in our department do anyway, so it's Watermelon Wednesday. If we continue to have our meetings on Wednesday, which is what I plan to do, I may move them back a little bit depending on, I know the 3 o'clock time slot may not work for a lot of people, so I may move back to 4 to 5 and then 5 to 6 from other class. We're just trying to get everything up and going this week. But this is me. I will turn off the video as I get going because it uses up more of my recording space as we go through here. And plus, you don't need to see my ugly face anyway. It's a whole lot better if you don't have to look at me than in person. So, welcome to class. I'm glad everyone's here. I'm going to turn off my video. The first thing I want to do is talk about our course and about how the course works. I'm going to go in and I'm going to share my desktop here, and I'm going to start first at Moodle because this is where you started off in the very beginning, was at Moodle. And Moodle is really just the entry point for the course. In other words, when we go into Introduction to Networks here, you'll notice there's not a whole lot here. And that's on purpose because when you go to netacad.com, click that link, it will bounce you over to netacad.com. And we'll talk about that. But we do have 3 primary areas. First was this Moodle course. Everyone's completed the introduction assignment, so quite honestly, you can log into Moodle and then go across these links if you want to netacad.com, which will be our primary class site, or to netlabs.stanley.edu if you forget the link. But you don't have to. The only thing I ask is that once a week, log into Moodle just to show, quote, attendance. And I know really you're going to be doing all your work inside of NetAcad, so I'll be able to track your attendance there really too. But this is the system we use that allows me to say, hey, they are at least in the course. And that initial assignment was to do your 10% assignment to make sure you're in class and registered. So all of you did that, and I really appreciate it. So quite honestly, we're pretty much done with Moodle, other than just using it to jump across to netacad.com or to netlabs.stanley.edu if you don't have those bookmarked or if you don't remember them for whatever reason. So I'm going to close it out. Any questions on Moodle before I move on, though?
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to close out Moodle because there's really no need for us to have it here. This, however, is where we're going to be going. This is our NetAcad class. I've got a ton of classes I'm teaching, you will see, too many. But I've got a ton of classes here, and your class is ITC Intro Fa17. When we click in this class, you will see your first page. Now, this is very important for you to understand about the way my courses work. For my courses, the primary area we're going to be in is in this modules area. Somebody just jumped in, and let's see who it is so I can look at my participants. Chris, welcome, Chris. But the modules item is where you want to click because this is going to show you the flow of the course and what we're kind of doing in this course. Each week, I will be discussing a chapter. I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing chapter 1 this week because, honestly, it's such an introductory chapter, it's not very hard for you to understand the concepts. As we move forward, I will be lecturing on the chapters and talking about them in class so that you're aware of how it works. But each chapter has several items in it. One is obviously launching the chapter, which takes you to the chapter content to where you can go in and read the chapter content. I do not require a book in this class. In fact, for my students, I don't technically require a book in the class itself. I actually get them, give them the option of buying the study guide, the CCNA study guide for Net 125, which is our intro course, and Net 126, which is our Routing and Switching Essentials course. So instead of buying the book that has just this same material in it, I have them buy a book that helps them study for the certification exam. But once inside here, you'll notice you move back and forth at reading. Okay, so you can move forwards and you can read different things about technology and those things. There are videos obviously in here. There are some areas where you need to be aware that when you're looking at a picture, there may be an item you have to click to get more information. So just be aware of that. Like here, for instance, you click on each one of these to get more information about what a SOHO is, what worldwide networks are, worldwide networks, which are obviously WANs. But be aware that there are items inside of the pictures, especially as we get further on. And see, somebody's got a little bit of a echo. If you've got an echo, if you will, just mute yourself, and then if you have a question, Chris, if you'll mute yourself and then unmute if you have a question. So thank you very much. That way we won't have an echo. But as we move forward, we will have configuration examples, and each one of the items you see will be a different part of the configuration. So just be aware of that. Other items you can do that's really kind of neat inside the curriculum here is anytime you need to go to the course index, it shows you all the content by section number for the particular module or chapter you're in. It will also show you the packet tracers. I'm going to show you what packet tracer is in just a minute. It's a very nice simulation tool that's available for you that does all types of things inside of the NetAcad. And then the lab index, and these are the labs that we will be doing inside our, mostly inside of the NetLab system. This one obviously is just a research lab, so there won't be anything in NetLabs. But you will notice that when we go in here and start doing scheduling, and I'll show more of NetLabs, but you'll see that inside of your class, there are labs that map to the labs inside the curriculum. So for us, the very first lab is this building a simple network, which is literally just 2 switches and 2 PCs that are available. And I'm actually going to go ahead and schedule that so I can show it to you. I've got a couple labs here already. People are doing labs. We have 5 pods there. So be aware those labs are our hands-on labs. As you go back to class, you will see this same thing replicated in the modules. You will see that, obviously, I asked you to read the chapter. I asked you to then do your packet tracers for the chapter, okay? And I have an upload for you. And what you do is, what I've done here is provided you a link. So when you click right here, it takes you directly to where the packet tracer is in the lab or in the curriculum. So you can then open that PKA file, and when you have packet tracer loaded, it will then open that packet tracer. It's opening on my other screen. I'll pull it over in just a second. And then you can complete that packet tracer and then save it and upload it into the upload link. So here's the packet tracer. And I'm going to click OK here. All right. And pull my directions over. Here's my directions. So there are directions. And here's the actual packet tracer. And so I can go through and do the packet tracer, and it will tell you how to do the help tutorials and those. And in this particular packet tracer, there's really nothing to configure. You just go through and complete what it's asking you to do. And you'll notice when I do a check results, there's no check results, okay? Because on this particular activity, it's not going to give you a grade. You're just going to complete it and upload it. Some of the packet tracers, especially in introductions, are like this. Later on, as we get into other packet tracers, for instance, I'll show you one in Chapter 2. There's a packet tracer that actually has configurations in it. So let's go to this one. I believe this is it. Yep, this is a big one here. Integration challenge. When you open up this packet tracer, you'll notice it's different. It actually has a scoring rubric that you can see that gives you. And so here's your skills challenge, and here's what it's asking you to actually do. So by the end of Chapter 2, you should be able to do all these things. But you'll notice that when I do a check results, it will tell me what I've scored. You did not complete it. And if you click assessment items, it will actually show you what you've done correctly and what you've not completed correctly. So for instance, this is, I'll go and show you an example here just real quickly. The room 145, okay, I got to do, hold on a second, I got to do a console cable from here over to here. So you can even simulate console cables. Desktop, and go to the terminal program and click OK. And you'll notice I'm now on the switch. And I'm going to do configure T. You'll learn how to do all this. Don't worry about doing it right now. But it says it wants the host name to be room 145. What you should see, hopefully, if it's grading right, yep, I got 1 point because I made the name room 145. Now be aware of this. Watch this. If I change the name to host room 145, all lowercase, probably going to lose that point depending on how it's been written. In this case, I'm not going to lose it because they wrote it to accept either one. But let's say I go in here and accidentally do room 40 at 146. Look at how I lost that point. So now it's grading this. So what I ask you to do, if there is an actual grade that is displayed, when you upload your packet tracer, I want you to take the packet tracer, okay? You save it, file, save as, and you save it with your name plus the packet tracer, and that's fine. I can just put, I'm putting KFC because that's my initials. Save it, and then upload that completed packet tracer in the upload item for each packet tracer. And you can see that under modules. So, for instance, for this particular packet tracer, I would upload it right here in this upload. It really helps me too, folks, if you upload a picture of your grade that you have. So if you'll do a check results, here I can't do it yet because I got that open. If you do a check results and you can show your score, just take your snipping tool. So take the snipping tool and just do a real quick snip and upload this with your PKA. This is a good habit for you to get into and a good habit to get your students to get into, because that way you don't have to open every single packet tracer and open them up, look at them, check the results, and then go forward. Now with my students, I usually do open them up, at least a couple of them spot check to make sure they're not just uploading something they found on the internet. But if you've got them with their name and you've got it set to be you know, their upload, then you can be pretty sure they did it. Also, I like this because I can look right here, and let's say you only do 45 out of 90 points. I know then I need to open it up and look at it and say, hey, why did you not get these other points? What can I help you with? What's available for me to be able to give you those the help that you need? So the modules themselves, again, you read the chapter, you complete the packet tracers, and then you do the labs. Now these two labs right here are just written labs. So they're just labs that are Word documents. You just have to answer the questions. So go in and just answer the questions. If you can, please do them in blue text. Here's the doc.x. So download it and then do your answers in blue text so I can easily find your answers. And then make it your name and upload it. And that's what you need to do with the lab. Unless the lab has a hands-on portion such as this. Now you see this lab 2333, it has a hands-on portion. For that reason, when I go over here, you'll notice there's actually a lab inside of NetLabs that I've scheduled. Now the neat thing about NetLabs is it is true virtualized machines. So if you get messages about opening JLMP files, open them up. But here you can see, here's a Windows 7 box. All right, that's PCA. If I click on the switch, and in this particular lab, you don't have to do it much with the switch. But if you click on the switch, it actually opens up a reverse telnet session into the switch. So you have access to a real switch. And if you click on B, it will open up that virtual machine, and then you can actually put IP addresses on A and B, and you could ping between the two. Right now, I'm just going to cheat because I'm being lazy. I'm just going to look and see what IP address is already on it, because it should be getting an IPIPA address. Unless, yep, 169, 144.11. And we go to the other one. It's my other PC. Minimize that one. This is, by the way, why it's nice when you're doing these labs to have two monitors, because I actually open up the lab on one and then open up the documents on one and then do the other, where I actually do the labs themselves. So if I do an IP config here, I can type 169.254.144.111, and eventually it should ping, and maybe not. And make sure this may be the pod. This is pod, no, it's pod 4. Let me check this to make sure this is not the one that was having issues with that switch. Don't you love it when a live demonstration goes wrong? Yep, look at that. It's got a config on it. Bet it's got VLANs. Yep, sure does. All right, so let's do a, part of the lab's probably deleting the VLAN. So let's do a array start, and then I'm going to reload. Forgot to do something. Anybody knows I forgot to do the VLAN, delete VLAN.dat, but it really won't matter. Okay. We'll come back to this in a second, and I'll be able to think. But that's the basic structure of the class. Now, obviously, we do have weekly meetings. You won't be able to make all those meetings. I know that. The other thing is, I want you to not freak out. That is the key. Because I know you look down here and go, oh, Lord, look at all these packet traces. I know as an instructor, you're not probably going to be able to do all these packet traces and turn them in. So what I ask you to do is 1 to 2 packet tracers per chapter. I'd prefer when there's this many, do 2, okay? But then I do want you to do all hands-on labs. The hands-on labs are very, very important. Those are the key. Now, Packet Tracer is a great program, and I'll show you where you get it in the class and how to install it. But I've never seen a job yet that said 2 to 4 years of Packet Tracer experience. Your students need to know how to work on real gear, not just Packet Tracer. All right. So while we're waiting for the NetLabs switch to reboot, because it is a real switch. That's one of the differences between Packet Tracer and NetLabs. NetLabs real gear. So you can't just say, hey, reload, and it's reloaded in 2 seconds. It's actually reloading. You see it's loading the iOS image from Flash, which you'll learn all this as we move forward in these classes. But it's loading it from Flash into memory, and so you have to wait for the entire thing to reboot. So it's a pretty common thing for real devices. Any questions at this point? Because I know I went over that very quickly.
Not for me. I mean, I'll have questions later, but right now I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? Chris, Jeff, anybody? Well, not maybe Chris. I'm there. Was that Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. James, got any questions?
So far? No,
good.
Not
okay,
right now.
Chris?
I might have some in the future, but I'm good so far.
Okay. So where do I get Packet Tracer? Well, if you go to the main page of the class and you go to Student Resources and scroll down, you will find Download and Install Latest Version of Packet Tracer. Go down and download and install version 7.1, and then you have your choice of 32-bit, 64-bit, your choice. I just loaded 64-bit. There is a Linux version if you happen to be running Linux. I have not messed with it much, but you're welcome to try it. It may even work on, I don't know, it probably won't work on Apple devices, even though their kernel now is different. So very easy. Oh, click wrong thing. I'm sorry, y'all. Very easy to get to. Just Student Resources, and then download and install Packet Tracer. All right. So back to modules, and I'm going to check my switch. I bounce around a lot, folks. I'm like a squirrel on crack. I'm in the switch, and now I got to do one thing, folks. I should have done something earlier. I should have dill /VLAN.dat. It's not really going to have a big issue with what we're doing now. The VLANs are still there, but nothing's in the VLAN, so it won't hurt anything right now. But now let's go back to my PC, and let's try this again. Aha! All right. So the ping works. So I've got connectivity between these, across these two. Click Show Lab Content, and that will actually show you the lab itself. Okay. So it's going through and showing you the lab, showing you connectivity, what you need to do, and then going into the switch and getting the switch names. And this has got all the little things you do for basic switch setup, which is awesome. I mean, like I said, I really like the setup. Here you can show it shows you how to reload a switch. So you had to go in and delete the VLAN.dat if there is one, erase startup config. So they start you pretty early. This is Chapter 2 labs. They get you in actually working on a switch and getting a switch up and going. The other item here, I do have the pretest enabled for you. So when you go to do an exam, you'll click on it and you will be able to actually, you will have just take exam. I don't have that here because I'm not a student in the class. Each chapter has an exam with it. You do not have to do the quiz. They're just real short items anyway. It's obviously good to do it if you want to help study, but they are not required by me. But you do need to do the chapter exams for each one of the chapters. So in review, for the 4th time, because I like to make sure this is very clear on the recording. Moodle, you're pretty much done with. Just try to log into it once or twice. That's every couple weeks. Log into it just to show attendance. Netacad.com is where you're going to do the majority of your work. Inside of the modules tab, you will see the items that are available. Reading the chapter, doing the packet tracers, 1 to 2 per. And if there's a large number of them, I'd prefer you do all of them and do 2 of them. If there's only like 2 per chapter, do both. And then the hands-on labs, which I do require you to do all the hands-on labs. So all the labs that are under the labs item. And every single chapter is set up like that. So you see you've got read it, packet tracers, labs, exams. Then there are, at the very bottom, each chapter has a chapter exam. Okay. Right now, folks, you don't have due dates in the course. I will be putting due dates on every assignment. Be aware of that. They're coming up. It's just something I haven't done yet. I waited till everybody got in the class. I also find if I put due dates the first week, people see all the due dates and some of them immediately drop out because they freak out because they don't know about the fact that I don't require every single packet tracer to be done. So there's actually a method to my madness, believe it or not. And that really is it. Once you get there, the other item is NetLabs. I will tell you one thing about NetLabs. Be aware when you log in, okay, so if you're logging in and you are prompted to do, and I didn't get it, but if you're prompted for a port test, make sure you do the port test because it will not work at all if you don't do the port test, okay? So be aware of that the port test is required in order for you to use NetLabs. And what it does is it tests your Java, it tests reverse telnet, make sure everything works. If you've never used NetLabs, I'm going to show you something fairly cool. I'm going to go into a class that has a large number of labs completed by my particular student account. I can actually go in here and I can look on the devices and I can see every single command that you type in. So this is great for online students or for students because they'll say, hey, I'm having problems with this step, and I can go in and actually look. Now, obviously, I didn't do much on this one. Let me see what else I got. Here's just a couple here where I did some show ver stuff. Did something on the DSL. Here it is. So I did some show version, looked around trying to figure out how to get. I was working on the switches for figure out what size flash they had on them. But I can see everything the student does, so I can actually go in and make sure that they understand what's going on. Also, it gives me a way to say, hey, guess what? You said you did the lab, but you really didn't do the lab because you didn't type a single thing yet. So that's kind of nice for students because we all know how students can be on occasion. We don't like to know that, but sometimes that's the way they are. Now, to schedule yourself a lab, you just go to Scheduler. You only have 2 items, which will be reserve time for yourself or reserve team. So you will just reserve time for yourself. You'll pick a class. Your class is the ITC Fa17 intro class. And your username is the same as your Moodle login without the @scc.stanley.edu. The initial password is Cisco123. Okay. So you click intro. And then you can pick you just go ahead and pick in the labs that you want to do. Now here's a great thing about the labs. You'll say you know you've got time Saturday night at 7 o'clock. You can go out and schedule the lab that far in advance. Just please make sure that if you schedule a lab that you use it because I don't want the lab being scheduled and not used. I have 48 students in ITC courses, 4 courses, and I've got a couple who will be doing CCNA Security. And so please don't, if the labs, if you don't need to do the lab, or if you're not going to do the lab, don't schedule it. I've also got a limit of 4 hours max for you for a lab schedule. So that's the most you can schedule at any one time is 4 hours in a chunk. Most of these labs you can get done in 2 hours. In addition, most of these labs will have the first, well, not just addition, the first 10 minutes are used, I'd say, to boot the lab, so give it about 10 minutes to boot the lab. The last 10 minutes of any reservation is used to reset the lab to its default. So be aware of that, that the labs are scrubbed when you're done, so they should be set, ready to go for the next user when you are there. So again, remember, just scheduler, go in, pick yourself, and then schedule the lab that you want to do. I would say the first couple times you do a lab, give yourself at least 2 hours, just to give time to get around in the interface, play in it, and see what you can do, even though the lab may be able to be completed faster than that. I will tell you this, I'm going to pull this over, just not because I don't trust you, but because I don't trust anybody. I'm going to log in with my student account. And I'll pull it back across so you can see what a student account looks like. Now here is something we get sometimes, especially with Chrome. It says, hey, I can't find Java on your machine, even though Java is definitely installed. In that case, just click continue. And then it's going to ask you for a port test. Do you want to do it? Do not skip this test. Make sure you start it. And if you're running Chrome, you got to download the JNLP file. Then you have to click on the JNLP file. Then you have to answer continue, and it's aggravating as can be. And even if you trust it, you have to click run. And it's going to run the test and eventually pass the remote access test and let you in. You see my 2 reservations here. I can go into these reservations, okay, and say it's initializing, so that pod's still initializing. I deleted a couple pods, that's why I had messages. I was just showing you that. Okay, so it's still initializing. So as long as this initializing is on here, the lab is not up and running fully. Okay. So let's go back to this one. Yep. Now see, this lab's fully up and running. When I get done, let's say I've completed the lab and I've still got 47 minutes remaining. When you get done with the lab, just click I'm done. And when you do that, it will then take 10 minutes to scrub the lab clean, and it will make it available for your classmates to be able to use. So be aware of that. If once it gets finished, once you're done with the lab, do click I'm done. That way the extra time's not just sitting there not being used. All right. So as I'm thinking here, I can't really think of much more in terms of introductions for this particular section. Are there any questions?
Do we need to complete the pretest?
Yes, I'd like for you to go ahead and do the pretest. I've got the exams turned on now. One of the reasons, then you will learn this in the class when you activate exams. So if I go in here and activate an assessment under the assessment center, it only activates for the students who are currently enrolled in the class. So that's why it took me so long to get the exams active. I had to wait till everyone had redeemed their seat tokens and were actually in the class. Otherwise, you had to do multiple different activations. And in fact, you'll see that I got everybody in, and I've got everybody activated for all the tests because I waited till everybody was in. That's why it took a little bit. So yes, please do the pre-test. Doesn't matter what you score, I could care less, but it is nice to kind of get an idea of where you're at, and also give you a chance to see how the testing engine on the chapter exams works, because it's the exact same engine. Okay, other questions? No questions? No all, see all, hear all? Or it's too early to have a question? That's probably more like it. It's too early to have a question.
Right, a little too early. Once we get to 30, it'll be a different ballgame.
I understand. But the basic flow of the course, you're okay with. Everybody's good with that.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
All right. Let me jump into chapter 1, just do a real quick kind of overview of chapter 1. This is really an easy chapter. This is just talking about what a network is, how networks affect our daily lives, how we work, live, and play. You know, it used to be Cisco's big slogan. We were giving tours today to 8th graders, and I asked them, I said, think about it. What in your life today is not affected by computers? And really, it was kind of funny because one of the other instructors in there with me said, well, you can go out and pet your dog or cat, and that's not affected. And I said, really? I said, how many of you in here have a chip in your dog or cat? You know, several people raised their hand. I'm like, look, you've got a computer chip in your dog so that if it gets lost, you can scan it and find out who it belongs to. There are even, you know, one of the neat things I've seen are the cat doors, and those cat doors are programmed to only certain chips, so only certain cats can come in a cat door, which is very good because I have a blink camera system, and just the other day I had a skunk on my front porch walking around trying to sniff in the front door, so I'm very glad it couldn't get in the cat door. So technology really is in every single thing that we have. Now, be aware there's some, I say, marketing fluff. You know, it's Cisco marketing fluff. We can't help it. But for the most part, the classes do a good job of not being a Cisco marketing item. They're real good about just teaching concepts. So, but there's a little bit of it in there. There has to be. It talks about the internet, what the internet is, how they support how we learn. You know, that really has changed a great deal when you think about how differently we learn today with Khan Academy, with I use INE. We have the training items from INE, so we go in and watch videos. The students that I deal with today would rather watch a video than read any day of the week. In fact, if you can get them to read, it's a miracle. So we learn by doing online. And think about, just the other day, I had to do, a couple years ago, I had to fix the ice maker in my refrigerator. What do you do if you need to fix something this day and age? What's the first thing you do?
You Google it.
You Google it, and then, you know what? I go to YouTube to find a video on somebody that fixed it, and I watch them do it, and then I go and do it. And I think about how different that is from our parents. You know, our parents couldn't go search how to replace or fix the ice filter in your refrigerator. Now you can go to the exact model number, and somebody somewhere has probably had that problem, and they fixed it. So it's pretty amazing. And I tell people all the time, your Google foo must be strong. I'm still waiting for a religion to come up around Google. You know, holy Google, what is the answer to life? And it spits out an answer. So it's pretty amazing what we can do. Collaboration tools, you know, I have friends in Germany. I have friends all over the world that I communicate with in real time with wikis, podcasts, and again, none of this is new to anybody that's in this class. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. How we play, anybody here got an Xbox One or a PS4? Anybody got the Xbox One X on order?
PS4.
PS4. I got an Xbox One X on order, and, you know, I'm all tickled about it. And then, of course, my upstairs TV is starting to die. Just my luck. So, of course, I've told my wife, well, now I've got to have a 4K TV. I mean, it's an absolute requirement because the TV, yeah, and she's not buying it for some reason. These labs, this lab right here is the lab that is linked via the module link. So it'll tell you which one of the labs to do. Some labs I don't have you do, so be aware of that. Here's our different types of networks, you know, SOHO, small area networks. You know, one of the things I always teach people is about, let me pull up my notepad. I use all kinds of tools here, but you know, we've got local area networks, right? Local area networks, I always say they're limited area networks. So it's a limited area. Now we use this term we use it more for bigger networks than a lot of people think. For instance, my campus network here, I would call that a local area network, although there is a term for it. What is a term for a campus area network? It's a CAN. Okay, that's a campus area network. Good, can't spell. By the way, folks, I've been hit by a truck 18 months ago and was paralyzed from the neck down. So my typing's not as good as it used to be. I can walk, thank God. It's a miracle I can. But be aware that If you ever meet me in person, I look like I'm drunk. I'm not drunk, probably not drunk. I just stagger around a little bit. How about a man? What is a man? Yep, metropolitan. It's a metropolitan area network. And I may not have spelled that correctly, even though I do have English degrees. So what is a WAN? It's a wide area, right? The Internet's our best example of that. That's a group of networks put together. Now here's one many people have not heard of. Any of you got a Fitbit? Okay. I've got a GPS that was on my bike when I got hit that was relaying my exact location to my phone, which was then being put on a web page. We now have what are called PANs, personal area networks. So we've got networks that are, within the area of a single person. All of these are different types of networks, okay? And they all have similar items. So one of the things we always talk about is networks can have clients and servers. A client requests services, while a server provides services. So a web client would be asking for web services from a web server which would provide those services. A couple types of networks, peer-to-peer. And again, I know this, is this pretty much just a review for everybody? Pretty common stuff. Peer-to-peer networks, small, less complex, less secure because they don't have centralized administration. Each machine typically acts as a client and a server. There's no dedicated administrator. Usually we say a peer-to-peer networks have no more than 10 devices on it. Peer-to-peers are not terrible though. If you want to hook a couple of machines together in a small network and share resources, you can do so. They are cheaper too because you don't have to actually purchase or hire an administrator. Let me go back to my right here. I want to pull up my notepad again and show you. I have a definition of a network that include the following. All networks have to have first something to share. There's got to be a reason for it to be there. So something to share, some type of data, okay, something that needs to be moved. It then has to have a media or medium. And I say that now because now we don't have to have cables. We can have just wireless networks. Although when you say wireless LANs, that's really kind of a mistake because most wireless LANs are not fully wireless. They're access points wired to the switches, which is the local area network. But still, you either have a media such as copper, fiber, or you have a medium, RF signal, microwave, something or of that type. The last thing you have to have is some type of protocol. You have to speak the same language, a language that all the devices on the network can speak. So when we get up here, we're looking at network components. Something needs to be shared. It could be a phone call between these two devices. It could be this machine requesting a web page off of the machine on the right. But either way, we have something to share. We then have a media or medium. In this case, they're showing copper cable in an Ethernet standard. And then we have a protocol. And the protocol that we use 99.9% of the time is IPv4 or IPv6, so TCP/IP. That's the three items needed to have a network. Then within that network, you have components that perform different functions. You have end devices that create data and typically are used to interface with users. You have intermediary devices such as the switches, the routers, those are intermediary devices. And then you have obviously the protocol that goes across it, so your different processes and services that allow that. So I described it a little bit differently than what's in the curriculum, but it's pretty much the same. You have devices, something to share, you have medium, and these services are the protocols that run across the network. Again, end devices. Now, you obviously hear a little, okay, be aware we've got to make sure the Flash programmers have a job too. So this is the little, the messages going across and everything. So be aware are flash animations in the curriculum itself, so you need flash. Here's our intermediary devices and some of the common descriptions or common icons used for them. This is a router icon, switch icon, multi-layer switch, so it's a switch that can do routing, wireless routers, and a firewall appliance. But these typically retransmit signals or route signals or manipulate signals as they move between networks or within a network. And then the media, here again, copper. We've got fiber optic cable and wireless. I just read that I believe it was Microsoft laid a fiber optic cable between Virginia Beach, Virginia, and somewhere in Spain. And it's an ongoing trend of companies actually laying their own fiber or their own cables across the ocean to support their data centers. They have a big data center in the Virginia area. I think it was them and Facebook that worked together to actually put this cable under the ocean. So kind of a neat idea. When we pick, one of the things to talk a little bit about here, and we'll talk much more about, is how do you pick a network media? Well, one is how far can it go without losing the signal strength, which is a concept called attenuation. How much data can it carry, which is the bandwidth of, theoretical bandwidth of a piece of cable. How easy is it to work with? How expensive is it? How resistant to EMI does it need to be? All of those are items that are considerations when you determine what media or medium you're going to use. And again, here's our representations. These are important when you get into Packet Tracer because Packet Tracer has a set of representations inside of it that are used, and this is a blank Packet Tracer. By the way, you can go in and you can actually click on end devices and you can create your own labs. You can go in and create your own generic lab. Let's say you want a lab that's just got one switch and 2 PCs or 3 PCs or whatever, and you want to connect copper cable, so we have fast Ethernet to fast Ethernet 1. So this can be used in many different ways. Okay, see it's running through spanning tree, but it uses the same representations as what's found throughout the curriculum and really found throughout all of Cisco's documentation on their web page and throughout the internet. So I'll show you something neat here in a second too with Packet Tracer. You're going to see it when you do the first lab, but you can actually try to send a packet between two. This just sends an ICMP, and it has no functional ports because that hasn't come up yet. As soon as spanning tree finishes, PC1 has no, oh, what did I do here? So, oh, did it wrong. No functional ports. All right, well, let me see what's wrong. Oh, I know what it is. I don't have an IP address on it. Listen. Yep, no IP address. So I have to have an IP address on it. But if I did, I could just ping right across it and do that. I will say this is one thing that's kind of bad. I don't like the way you put IP addresses in this because it's nothing like a real PC. And it's funny, I do Skills USA every year, and I've seen students who only use Packet Tracer who couldn't put an IP address on a real PC or had trouble with it. And it's because all they did was use Packet Tracer. And that's not good. Oh, wrong one. Hold on, I clicked the wrong one. So now if I click this, it should ping. Now if I go through here and actually do it with the step through, I can actually step through it and show you every single capture. So I can do a capture board and you see it actually going out, and you can actually watch it move across in simulation mode. So you see the ICMP echo request, see ICMP echo reply, and all go. And you see some STP stuff too. But that's when you're running in simulation mode versus real-time mode. And you'll learn all that when you play with Packet Tracer in this class. But you've got the exact same representations, which is nice because it keeps it consistent for you. Topology diagrams, this is a physical topology, so it shows you how the cables are actually connected versus what is the logical topology based upon the IP addressing. So you can see the logical topology, the IP address networks are different, 10 network, 11 network, and 100 network. versus the physical topology, which is very different. And let's see, different types of networks. We talked about LANs, WANs, PANs, the internet, and all of those. Internet, extranet, I'm not really going to spend a lot of time there. So basically at this point, you're just going to read through the rest of this and then complete the information. I will tell you this. This is interesting here when they throw in this items about converged networks. We used to have these separate networks of computer networks, phone networks, and then broadcast networks, so TV. Now everything is running on IP. For instance, right now I can pull up a camera looking at my house, which is an IP camera, which is really neat. The converged network, though, because of this, it's very, very important that you redesign how you think about your networks. For instance, the other day, the power went out in our building. Well, my phone is an IP phone. That means you've got to make sure that the switches in your racks are connected to a UPS, otherwise phones go out. And that becomes an issue of security. When the phones go out or the power goes out, phone goes out. Whereas in a traditional phone network, that didn't happen because you had current running on that phone line. So you have to rethink a converged network. You also have to start thinking about things like quality of service, because voice needs a higher quality of service than web surfing. Just like video needs a higher quality of service than web surfing. So the converged network changes how we kind of look at things. It also changes how we think about building our networks in terms of making them more fault tolerant. Everything runs on one network, that network has to be up. Scalability, how easy is it to add new nodes to the network? How secure is it? That's a big problem. Most people don't realize that voice over IP is really not that secure. And then quality of service, how do we ensure that we've got the quality of service necessary for voice over IP, for IPTV, for our video cameras going across our IP network? And then there's little discussions here on each one of these items, being scalable, quality of service, and security. Some new trends, BYOD. How many of your students bring their phones into class? I know all of you would raise your hand if you could. Online, yeah, and then all of that, they bring their phones, their laptops, their iPad, their Android device. So all of that is a huge security challenge. It's also a challenge in terms of number of IP addresses and the amount of traffic they're bringing through your network. Online collaboration, that's huge. Being able to work together, just like this WebEx session. It's pretty amazing that we can have a class online like this. Video communication, video conferencing, cloud computing. This is that whole thing of putting things out in the cloud, making sure that you're able to access data at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Office 365. What happens when Amazon Web Services goes down? That many websites go offline. In fact, this site would go offline because, look, this is hosted on an Amazon Web Service site. In the home, you've got, obviously, smart home technology. And we were talking a little bit about smart locks the other day, and think about how someone can hack smart locks. If everyone had a smart lock on their house, you could unlock every house in a state that had a particular device on it. Powerline networking. I used to dismiss this and say, nobody uses this. But I had an instructor who lived in New York City. And he said, actually, I use this in my apartment because wireless is so cluttered because everyone has wireless devices that I couldn't get the bandwidth I needed through wireless because there were no open channels. So he actually used this Powerline networking to defeat the wireless interference that was taking place in his apartment. Now, my closest neighbor is like a quarter mile away. You know, the cows usually don't bother me. My internet connection's slow, but I don't have to worry about sharing the bandwidth with anybody. But that was an interesting thing where I had kind of dismissed this completely. But if you look around the country, there may be different uses for this. Do any of you use this Powerline networking, or have any of you used it?
I have not, but I would consider it.
Yeah, you think about that. If you are in a apartment complex or in an area where the wireless signals overlap and you can't find an open wireless channel, then you could do that. Honestly though, since you know more about networking, you can probably just move yours off to a different channel. Everybody's using the default channel anyway, so you can just move it to a different channel and they won't know the difference. Wireless broadband, this is interesting because remember Google Fiber actually quit putting Google Fiber in. They're looking at doing something like this. It's amazing to me that I have much faster internet speeds on my phone at my house than I do through my DSL connection, which is nuts. I get 11 megabits per second via DSL, and I can get 30 or 40 megabits per second with my cell phone, which is, again, sad but true. Security threats, they're out there, all different types. 143 million accounts compromised in the Equifax hack. That's almost half of the U.S. population. It's kind of crazy, but security threats are not going anywhere. This is a little bit of the Cisco network architecture. They talk a little bit about it. We'll get more into it as we move along. And then this is what we're looking for, folks. We're all wanting you to get your certification. Once you complete the intro course and the routing, switching essentials course, you can go and sit for your CCNA exam. Past that, when you're done with that, you'll then take scaling networks and connecting networks, and then you'll go take the second part of the CCNA and you will become a CCNA. You'll be a CCNA in routing and switching. There are now multiple CCNAs. I'm working on CCNA CyberOps, CCNA Data Center. I've got CCNA Security, CCNP, got that too. I'm working on my CCI. I want my CCIE. So this is that certification treadmill you're going to get on. The Academy program doesn't require you to get your certification, but I strongly, strongly recommend it. I've always said you need to practice what you preach. If you're going to require or ask your students to get the certification, then you should have the certification and should keep that certification current. Thank goodness I recerted my CCNP 3 days before I got hit by a truck. Otherwise, I would have been in big trouble and would have had to redo my entire CCNP. Now, folks, that's Chapter 1. Are there any questions on Chapter 1? None? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my desktop. I'm actually going to stop the recording. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And then